Hello, everyone. So we have another foot reading video for you today here from the Institute. Love, love, love the fact that everybody continues to send me pictures of their feet and ask for readings. And some of you have let me create videos like this. While some readings have gotten so extensive, if you would like to book a formal appointment, you can always do so via the website in the details below, and we can Skype and chat about your feet and really decode what maybe I can't really get into in these videos or just through email communication. So that's always an option, but for now, let's jump into our next video. And for those of you who I already see are jumping on the live video, definitely make sure to say hello in the chat, and I will share my screen with you right quick. Okie dokie. So here we are. We are in the foot reading video. This is the second video actually for January. So excited to be doing two during this month because it's always awesome when everybody continues to kind of fuel the foot reading addiction that I have and how interesting it is and jump on with all the contents and all that jazz. Hey, Sandy. Sandy just jumped on. Hello. So as a reminder, if you're not in the conversation, you are out of the loop, and the conversation is happening on the Facebook group. That is a wrap, unintentionally. But we are in the Foot Reading and Reflexology online community Facebook group. That's where all of these pictures are being posted, talked about, shared, conversed upon, and likewise discussed. So videos like these are in response to the pictures that you guys are posting and giving me permission to do longer videos about, because it's so interesting when we all get together as a group and pick out what we find valuable and what we would potentially share, like in a professional setting with a client or friend or family member, about what their body is trying to say just by analyzing the feet. And it always helps to have somebody with a little bit more experience kind of guide you through the process. So that's the intention of these videos. Okay. So first and foremost, I'm going to go over what I see. Then normally what I do is I go into what I would say and not say. We're going to save not say for the beginning, and I'll clarify that in the next slide. But I'm really going to tell you what markers that I found. There are a lot in this video. Normally I limit it to the top 3, and that will not be the case. As you will see, I'm in rhyme right now. Not really sure what that's about. Feeling very, very limericky. So what to do about it, which is a huge part of the foot reading process, understanding that it's not just about what you see and decoding those markers, but also how would you coach the client into wellness based off of the markers that you find in the feet. Super, super important and very much part of the practice. So don't skip that part, because otherwise you're just ripping somebody a new one and you're not telling them how to go fix themselves, which is not kind. So we always want to make sure that we're balancing the kind of breakdown of the feet and reading the feet with suggestions that people can take away to make sure that they find value in the experience. Okay. So context and the story. This is where we get a little bit different and where I start to tell you about this pair of feet that we are about to analyze from multiple different angles. First and foremost, there's this idea that some of you have been struggling with in the group, as well as some of my live and online students. Putting together the pieces is where, from a foot reading perspective, we start to take multiple markers and blend them into this idea of there's a bigger picture happening here, which is point number 2, kind of what is that bigger picture? So as opposed to maybe picking up your top 3 and saying, oh, well, there's this, there's that, and the other, and this is what to do about it. Sometimes there are so many markers present that a story starts to form, sometimes very chronologically, which freaks clients out when you're able to really pinpoint a time frame to it all. But there are some readings that start to take on this bigger theme, bigger picture, bigger lessons, as opposed to just dissecting the individual markers present, and this pair of feet is different in that way. So as opposed to some of the other more recent videos, the foot reading challenge videos that we've been doing for the group, where we've picked top 3, and those top 3 have then been decoded physically and mentally and emotionally, and then we get the methods of balancing, I'm going to run through all of the markers that I find significant, and then give you like a big old synopsis at the end, because there's just so much stuff that we need to cover, and markers that are blending into themselves in terms of meaning. And then there's irrelevant parts that we just need to cut out altogether. And the finished product will be this encapsulated story based on the context of what we're finding within the extremities. So it's just, I'm making it sound super complicated and very grandiose at this point, so I'm going to shut up. But this idea that some feet really do paint this picture that you can then really succinctly, through practice and experience, deliver a very fine-tuned, singular message to the client. And that's what I'm so grateful to have it kind of brought in this video presentation today. Okay, so here's our feet. Here are that I wanted to point out before we get started is these feet are on the worker feet side. For those of you that have read Jane Sheehan's book, Let's Read Our Feet, Chris Stormer definitely talks about that in The Language of Feet as well. But this idea that these feet are wider, broader, and they are all about getting the job done. That is, when we see feet like this that have really pronounced bony structure, definitely a lot of earth in the constitution for my students. These feet are all about making sure that they are on task, that they are achieving measurable results, and that they are making everybody around them as happy as possible. We are going to find that with this pair of feet specifically, it is to a disadvantage. And that's part of the story as well. So first marker, hole in the heart. Now, that is a terrible way to start off a discussion with a client. So I am using it for educational purposes, not for practical purposes. If this was a live client in front of me, that would not be the first marker that I start off with. Please do not do that, especially using the word heart. People are going to think that you're telling them that their heart is physically wrong, that they are going to keel over and die, and that is not the case, especially with this person. There are other markers that we do not see, so it is not a physical part of the equation. But what I'm talking about here is a metaphorical hole in the heart. So this ditch, this divot, this tiny little hole that is literally in vertical zone 2, so in line with the second toe, and horizontal zone 2 on the ball of the foot, this tells us that since it's on the right side, it's the equivalent of the past. This is a past hole in the heart. So they kind of had a little chunk of their emotional state picked out by some stressor, and that is still lingering within their physical tissues. So they got a little bit jarred emotionally, and this hole is a product of that emotional jarring. Okay, so marker number 2 is current emotional defensiveness, which we can see on the opposite foot, left side, representing the present moment, still in 2-2, so in line with the second toe, and on the ball of the foot, that vertical zone 2, horizontal zone 2, but instead of a hole, we have puffiness and callousing. So when we see that puffiness callousing combo, it's giving us the idea that there's a little bit of swelling, there's overgrowth of tissue, almost like, in this case, the body has created a shield or a little bit of a buffer around the emotional state currently. So these two markers together give us such an interesting story right off the bat, that there was this point where emotionally they got dug into, like a chunk got bitten out. And now they've compensated by just getting a little bit hardened emotionally. And yes, we could talk about this physically in terms of right shoulder being weak, left shoulder being tight. However, as we see throughout the other markers, that is not the flavor of the conversation, and that is a really important nuance to understand when all the markers are stacking up in the physical column versus the mental emotional column, and that just takes practice. Okay. Marker number 3, I know some of you saw it. I know some of you were looking at it And you thought that that would be the first marker that I would pick, but I didn't. Especially some of you in the Facebook group totally nailed this marker. So we can see chronic exhaustion and weakness of relationships. A lot of you went in the very physical direction, and that is totally appropriate because this is vertical zone 4, horizontal zone 4, so in line with the fourth toe and in the proximal arch. This means that it's a pure lower digestive hip pelvic reproductive issue. Not saying that all those things are effective, but just that really, really deep core space is part of that situation. And because it is 4-4, I'm going to peg it as lower digestive because it is so central. And when I see lining like this, I've seen it before. It's basically, if you wanted to think of the lower GI as just being totally fatigued and exhausted. But again, following the story, when we think of vertical zone 4 as the influence of family and relationships and horizontal zone 4 as the center of family and relationships, when we see a 4-4 marker like this in this spot, it's all about this person's top 5, meaning the top 5 people that they spend the most time with and are the most emotionally invested within. So when we see this serious infection of air in 4-4, this to me talks about chronic exhaustion and weakness within relationships, almost like a lack of support that's been going on for a pretty long time. So not to make that sound very doomy and gloomy, but the fact that this person's body is telling us in a very real way through the feet that they do not feel supported within their top 5 relationships. And the people that they've surrounded themselves with are probably draining them more than they're contributing to them. So that is a very real conversation that I have to have with a lot of my clientele. This is by no means a rare marker. It is so common. And yes, Sandy just jumped on. Are the lines considered infection of air? Yes. So that is, for my students specifically, you'll hear me use that terminology, infection, which means an element has pervaded a particular reflex. And this is definitely what we're seeing here, is the lines concentrated in this area on both sides, meaning the area has been infected by the element of air, representing weakness, fatigue, and overextension. Okay, good call, Sandy. So that is marker number 3. Let's jump on to the next set of pictures for further markers. Okay, here we have the lateral surfaces of the feet. So if you're looking directly at the screen, the picture on the right is the right foot, the picture on the left is the left foot, obviously. But there is a little bit of lighting issue here. So this is important to understand for my students, this idea that lighting can sometimes play tricks, but in this case, there's no way to play tricks over the marker that we're seeing currently, which some of you might have even pointed out just mentally in your head, or some of you are probably like screaming and pointing at the screen like, it's right there, Sam, it's right there, I see it. Let me tell you first and foremost what I found. Okay. Marker number 4 is a biggie. So the cuboid notch on the left side is infected with air. Good call, Sandy. Again, this theme that we are continuing to see running through weakness in the left leg and knee, along with exhaustion in relationships caused by trying to move forward. Now, how did I get to that place? So left side being the present moment. And then when we have the cuboid notch, which is in horizontal zone 4 territory, it brings us back to that idea of family and relationships. And then vertical zone 5. So everything in line with the 5th toe, or the little baby toe, is vertical zone 5. And vertical zone 5 is the influence of sense of security and how somebody is moving forward. So when we think of dryness in the family area, but also in line with the 5th toe, means that they were trying to take their relationships to the next level. They were trying to make some strategic security moves, and it just happens to weaken their relationships further, which is not an ideal place to be, just from an already not necessarily compromised, but definitely fatigued relationship state, trying to move forward and then feeling like it's just making things worse. There's a lot of nourishing that needs to happen. So that's going to be, I'm giving it away, but that's going to be a major theme in the areas of emphasis. So when we also think of the physical implication of this reflex. The cuboid notch represents the structures of the legs. So definitely I would be on the lookout for symptoms of trichiny, leg spasms, weakness on the left side, definitely muscular fatigue on the left leg side. But again, this idea that the theme here is just the exhaustion and the emotional side of things. So that's really where I'm taking the session if this was like an actual session. Okay. Now let's go on to our last actual set of marker pictures. And here we have like the final three that we're going to be dissecting. So first, marker number 5, the big toes are leaning. And I know that if Jane is watching this video, I'm sure she's just in a complete fit, because that's definitely the first thing you notice, even more so on the left side, which is interesting. The big toes leaning represent what Jane would say, bending over backwards for people is how she would interpret that. I find that it represents both deviations in the head and neck space, like the neck is physically bent out of shape, but then also that the mental, the thoughts and opinion space, that representation internally of the toes is curved unnecessarily. So they're constantly needing to kind of smith their words in order to make sure that they feel like they're not offending or that they're saying the right thing, as opposed to just being a straight shooter and telling it like it is, which is a precarious position. So it's gotten them kind of mentally a little bit twisted or leaning out of alignment. Okay. That was a little bit out of order. So we'll talk about 6 and 7 together because they do go together. So when we think about the right toe as being clouded, we can see that discoloration of the nail. There is a little bit of true fungus underneath that nail, so you can see the darker spots, but then there is a lot of density and callousing, non-fungus related underneath that nail as well. When I talk about nail fungus, I personally, like, I'm not the kind of person that if this were to happen on my feet or a client's feet, I wouldn't recommend that they go laser it out or try to burn it out with chemicals, because from a foot reading perspective, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean a localized infection. It's opportunistic. It's in a literal infection of the headspace. So when we think of past mental clouding as the meaning of this nail discoloration, it's the right side, the nail of the toe, specifically the big toe, represents the screen of the mind. So the fact that it's gotten darkened and clouded, that's exactly what's been happening mentally for this person. But we can tell that it has definitely cleared up on the left side, which is a good sign. But we are left on the left. We are left on the left side with current mental shedding through vocalization. How did I pull that rabbit out of that hat? So when we see that little shedding of skin, so that is a release. Another air marker, mind you. So the theme continues with the air versus the deviation of the big toes and the cloudedness of the big toenail on the right side are both earth markers. So when we think of the shedding of skin on the left side, it's a release of tissue wherever that shedding occurs. And here it's on more of the neck space of the big toe. So it's almost as if this person has taken that mental congestion and really started to shed it through talking about what they're thinking. Maybe they've done some journaling, some extensive maybe counseling, or just, you know, meeting a friend for lunch, which is another method of balancing that we're going to get into, and talking about what's been going on between their ears. So all of that could be possible, but there's definitely been a release of that mental tension, and I do believe it's from like physically talking about it. Okay, so just to recap, putting it all together, these are our 7 markers. Marker number 1, hole in the heart, not the physical heart, but the emotional heart, past. So there was a past issue. Marker number 2, current emotional defensiveness, because of the past emotional chunk that was taken out of this person. They have compensated in a way that is defensive in nature, producing the callousing. Marker number 3, chronic exhaustion and weakness of relationships. This is a biggie because it gives us a huge foundational crack within their horizontal zone 4, both physically and mentally and emotionally. So family and relationships through this marker is definitely the core focus of the reading. Marker number 4, the cuboid notch on the left side, is infected with air. Weakness in the left leg and knee, along with exhaustion in relationships caused by trying to move forward, are all possibilities. So when we think of marker number 4 as just backing up marker number 3 in terms of meaning, you can see how they're starting to overlap and we're starting to build the story here. Marker number 5, both big toes are leaning, and that gives us the idea that since the family relationship structure has been non-supportive, the thoughts and opinions have warped accordingly. But there has also been mental clouding associated and a current release through vocalization. So there's this continuation of the process. There's underpinning stress with the top 5, which is causing maybe some emotional fluctuations. That chronic exhaustion is definitely being felt physically, and then it's starting to affect the mental space. And we're now at the point where it's like, what do we do about it now? So we're going to talk about how we do it, what we do about it now. So putting it all together, let's decode the meanings. So physically, there's a theme of weakness and fatigue affecting the body due to the emotional state, i.e., how you feel internally is how you feel physically. This is a really common kind of synopsis that I give to a lot of my clients. When we see multiple air markers, there's this trend of exhaustion, fatigue, overextension. So there's a theme of weakness and fatigue that's affecting the body due to the emotional state. We're already noticing so many of these markers are talking about the subtle internal state as opposed to the gross physical state. So when we think about the body as responding to the person internally, that's what's happening here. The body would be fine if the nervous system was able to sort itself out, but that needs to take priority as opposed to, trying to find a physical solution for an ultimately internally rooted problem. So internally, family and relationships seem to be at the core of the stressors at hand. More recently, the attempts to move forward have only made the lack of support clearer. This is where we would really get into the coaching aspect of these feet. So the family and relationship dynamic as the core kind of infection of air space within these feet are definitely what I would call marker number 1 if I wanted to kind of reshift it into top 3. But more recently, it's important to give clarity to the client that they've tried to make some moves, they've tried to shuffle around the pieces in the board, and they've just been met with more resistance and more draining of their energy as opposed to regaining of their energy. So this whole process is starting to become clearer and clearer that they need support that they're not getting. And this is where the methods of balancing really starts to come in. So methods of balancing. To balance air, we need earth. So stability, a predictable routine, and nourishment. 3 nourishing meals every day at the same time is a good start. Then begin to expand that routine into scheduling regular meetings with people that build you up, energize you, and give you the support you need. Once that structure roots itself in your life, you will feel everything begin to shift. Isn't that just like such a nice, concise little method of balancing right there? So that's what I aim to give to clients. I aim to really crack the code on the complicated markers, not give them too much psychobabble, and just really tell them exactly what I'm seeing, exactly what it means, and to give them a takeaway to say, this is where you need to focus. This is where your attention needs to be. This is how you can move the needle of your life to make sure that you're feeling fulfilled, as opposed to, especially in this case, running on empty. Okay? So I'm interested to hear what you all think of that little synopsis. So make sure to comment in the comment section below, and that will be that. But there's one more slide that we need to talk about, and that is what didn't make the cut. So this is what I sliced out of the presentation. For those of you in the Foot Reading and Reflexology online community, you know that these 2 pictures were part of that set as well. But I totally omitted them. Yes, I did. Because here's the deal. Although these two pictures do have markers on them, they support horizontal zone 5 and horizontal zone 4 instability and speak more about the lower body weakness that we already validated. Ultimately, healing the internal state is more important in this case. So we can see on the right foot that there's that strong tendon that's popped up. We can see the arch is strong, but we can even see that dorsal bone bump indicating some lack of nutrition, and then a lot of waving around the heel area, horizontal zone 5, indicating that sciatic nerve instability. So much that we could have picked out of here, but it's irrelevant. The story itself, as I was looking at these feet, evolved in a direction that was not necessarily physical. Although the physical body has definitely been affected, it's not part of what I would personally want to harp on with this client. When we think of the nervous system as both the bridge between the physical and the internal state, this person's internal state is directly affecting their physical state. The physical state isn't affecting the internal state. So as far as the reading goes, these pictures didn't really make the cut because they told us stuff we already knew, and they spoke more physically about what was happening when the root cause of the issue is internal, and we need to really drive home the need for support with this client, as opposed to saying, oh, just a couple rounds of physical therapy, do some yoga, it'll be fine. We really want to make sure that the point is heard and that the excess fat or information is trimmed. Hoot and Andy just jumped on. Hello, back. Excellent, but unfortunately you came in at the end of the presentation because that's it. That is all that we have for today. I hope that you have enjoyed this foot reading video. It's already been about 30 minutes. Holy crap, I can really talk. So make sure to subscribe. Love my subscribers. We just hit 1,000. Thank you for all of your support. Everybody's loving the foot reading videos, but make sure to join the Facebook group. So again, that is the Foot Reading and Reflexology online community on Facebook. We're having a grand old kiki in there. Everybody is just talking about feet a mile a minute. Some amazing posts and some amazing people all over the world are in that group. It's such a blessing to be a part of that. Sandy says thanks. Holly says awesome, Sam. Thank you both so much for joining. If you'd like, you can buy my book. It's Shameless Self-Promotion, which is Foot Reading, a Reflexology Primer on Foot Assessment, available via ebook as well as on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, where all major books are sold. And stay tuned. Lots more videos to come. We're doing a lot more of these challenges. Everybody loves them. And if you want to schedule an appointment with me, feel free to do so via the information below, and we can Skype chat about your feet, and we can consult, and I can tell you what your feet are saying about you. But on that note, I will flip real quick back so that we can chat face-to-face before I go. So that was an amazing foot reading video. I appreciate all of you that jumped on. Thank you for blowing up the chat as I am speaking to you. I love it, love it, love it. Everybody, some of my students in the online course are saying that they're ready for the next lessons. So that is just so awesome. I appreciate you all. Thank you. And I will chat with you later.